So good morning, Dani. Thanks so much for joining us on Business Owner Spotlight this week. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself and just let everybody know a little bit about your business?
Thanks, Scott, and thank goodness it's a sunny morning for a change. My name is Dani McFerran. I'm Creative Director at Dun & Dusted Design. We specialise in branding and packaging and websites, and we've started with a global mindset from the get-go. So we celebrated 10 years in business there last month. And when I started 10 years ago, it was very much how do we work with global clients right from the start? And that's what we try to pass on to our clients, get them really ready to hit the ground running and look like an international company right from the start.
So congratulations on 10 years. It's a big milestone for you.
I started obviously when I was a teenager, you know.
Yes, of course, and tell us a little bit more about your clients. What would be your ideal customer, or what would they look like?
Well, we deal with clients from literally all walks of life and all different positions in their business. So quite often we deal with startups who have no financial investment whatsoever. They just have a dream. And we get really, really honest conversations starting at the get-go of like, where do you really want this to go? And then also we get clients, we had one recently with a legacy of over 60 years, and we engaged in all the shareholders there who are somewhere 80 years of age. And, we're looking at rebranding a company with that. So we have the responsibility of the legacy that they've created, and also the huge amount of clients and customers that they have as well. So we work with people ideally that have an understanding and an appreciation for design, who perhaps either through their own understanding of design, they see, okay, we really need a presence and a very structured tone of voice and a very engaging, something that's different. Or it can be a client that's looked at, say, a competitor and has thought, oh, they've really spent a lot of money in their design or redesign. And a lot of companies in Northern Ireland do that. Some of the big clients that we've worked with, they've spent a lot of money in the redesign, and that repositioning can slightly unsettle some of their competitors. So they maybe start to go, okay, there's a real value in this design approach. We need to invest in ourselves, and we need to be looking at our communication channels and what we're doing right and what we're not doing right. And that's when they would come to the likes of Dun & Dusted, where it's very like what the name says. It's very open, it's a very transparent and a very safe environment to have those conversations, which can be quite confidential. And it's about really having that trust from the get-go and understanding that, there's times in a company's journey where things are going great, and then there's times when you just need to shift. And it's about having the honest conversations about what's really the problem. It could be staff, it could be investment, it could be anything, but you need to have that partner in design and your communication who understand the background and can really just speak your language to get you going over that hurdle and into the next furlong.
Yeah, so it sounds a wee bit like maybe they're getting a consequence, which is like a surface level problem, but you dig a bit deeper then to find out the true root cause. Is that fair to say?
For sure. Because at the end of the day, even if it's somebody starting out in a new business, they'll have what they know, what they think they know, what they don't know, and then what they really never had a clue. And we've all had that, starting out, and you think you've got it together, and then something happens, like what's happening with COVID, that everybody has to, it's blindsided, and you have to have that resource to deal with. But in design and branding, it's about future-proofing your brand right from the start. So understanding, okay, let's not just do what I would call like a pretty picture. So sometimes when you work with designers, it's basically, they take the name that you've come up with, and there's maybe not due diligence that have really thought about, how is that going to be transferred right across different countries? Is that going to be about the color scheme that you have? Is that actually going to be quite offensive in your marketplace, or what can we tweak? And also just that owning that IPO across different countries, and how you engage with your clients, what's your tone of voice and all of that as well. So it's about getting them, prepared for a 5-year of success, of like, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And I think that gives them also that inner confidence that they're not just doing it on their own. You kind of future-proof them from the start, and you're not going anywhere. You're that sort of team of people that, when I started, I really wanted the client to be the focus. that they had to be integral in the design team, so to speak. And that's worked really, really well, because they just feel, and this was back before Zoom, this was Skype. This is like, you know, so, but, you know, very much so the client is part of the team, and they see the sketches, they see the, you know, how we're working things out. They get to see the code, they get to look at the UX UI, they get to see all of that. And that, to me, that's really important. And it builds that trust where you see, okay, this is where we're going, and I feel more comfortable to take the company there.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about the 5 years, and just talking to you, you can see your passion for it, and I can see how a client will take a lot of confidence from talking to you about that as well. But you mentioned COVID there, so tell me, what sort of impact did COVID have on your business, and is there anything that you're still using today that's been a bit of a legacy from that?
Well, what I would say is we were already, you know, working in that work from home or work remote mindset. So what we ended up doing in COVID was actually helping a lot of our clients transition onto selling online, and also having those really awkward conversations of, you know, if product A is not selling but product B is, you got to shift. You know, you got to be able to be, you know, as Ross from Friends, you got to pivot. You know, you got to be able to make those decisions, and they are tough decisions. But to be able to go, no, our clients, listen to what our clients and our customers are saying. So, right, we need to shift here, but also be transparent in that as well. So we spent, you know, a lot of COVID, nothing really changed too much for our business. But what we felt was there was far more engagement and help that we were getting our clients into the position that we were in, and teaching people how to set up virtual meetings, you know, using Calendarly or using Zoom or anything like that. Working across time zones as well, how it's actually quite easy, quite doable, but you know, you have your boundaries in place, you know, 30 minutes, 45 or whatever. You have to think about the time zones of, you know, who you're dealing with in that. So a lot of it was not hand holding, but just really helping clients make that transition. And in terms of how that's helped going forward, our relationships are a hell of a lot stronger, because it's that added transparency of, this is, you know, it's not the Wizard of Oz. This is the curtain pulled back, and this is how you make an international global business work. And having those open conversations, like, how do I set this up, or what does this mean, and being that sort of that support for your client, which really at that particular time, I mean, you're coming on previous CEOs that would have been, you know, immaculate in the boardroom, you know, their children are going boogly in the background, and that's normal. So what we've tried to embrace is that, you know, that's life, that happened before, and it happens now. So bring your child onto the call if your child's in distress, it's okay. And that, I think I've noticed the whole change in business with that regard. People are a lot more tolerant, which is fantastic.
It's a big step forward. And what about you as a business owner then? What's been your biggest learning since you've been in business for yourself?
I don't think I appreciated how resilient that I am as a person. I don't think I ever learned the skill per se, but it's a mindset thing, and it's one thing that I try to pass on to our clients as well. A lot of the stuff that I work in as well is energetics. So it can be what a client is talking to and what they're saying, but what they're not saying as well. And some of the words that they're saying, it's reflecting back of that. So the resilience that I have learned, it's passing that on to a client and saying, look, it is going to get better. Watch the story that you're telling yourself. If you're telling yourself, oh my God, this is a travesty, this isn't going to work. In my mind, there's no such thing as failure. It's always solutions. There's always solutions to whatever we encounter. And that mindset, I didn't realize, is probably not normal in Northern Ireland anyway, but it's just perhaps my international learning, and, you know, moving away from a young age and saying, do you know what? Everything works out. It just works out. Don't worry. Just keep going. Build those people around you who share that mindset, who share that dream. It doesn't necessarily, you don't need to know the how. That will fill itself in. And the way that you think it's going to work probably isn't going to be that way. But it does work. And you need somebody like a Dani, like a cheerleader, like a Dani, who believes in your company and believes in your product, not with blind faith, but actually sees the true potential of what you can become and more. So we have a saying, dream big and dream even bigger. Because if your dream doesn't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough, you know? If you want to, we're talking about sponsorship with the client, and like, who would be your ideal sponsor? And they said, well, Nike. And I said, right, well, we're going to talk to Nike. We're going to pitch to Nike then. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, why not? And it's about bringing that, into the room with the client and seeing, oh my goodness, it's actually achievable.
Yeah. So you talked about a bit about resilience there, obviously, and like belief in your clients, which is it sort of mirrors into coaching there a little bit. So have you had a coach, or who would you say has been your best coach you've ever had, and why?
I've had several different coaches through the years, and sometimes I think people come into your life who aren't
Yeah,
official coaches,
of course.
but they, Jesus, did they tell you some lessons? Like you just get it. And I have, hopefully he'll be watching this at some stage. He's a very good friend of mine, Malcolm Emery, and many years ago, without going into too many details, I had started to deal with this particular client, and he drew my attention to the mindset that I had.
Yeah,
And it was one of the biggest lessons I had in business of how I was looking at this. And he just got me to flip that around
yeah,
180. And I thought, oh, I didn't think about it like that. And he says, it's because you didn't think about it, it's how you didn't see it. And
yes,
it changed how I was working with different clients. And it was neither good nor bad. But sometimes I think that's what a coach does, that they see your potential, but they also need to get you to learn that particular lesson. And it can be from a coach, or it can be from, somebody you really respect. I think
yeah,
for me, the reason why that resonated was so much was because he'd lived that life. He'd got that credential, and a good coach will have done the things that you want to do and understand the pain points, and will inspire you to kind of want to be a better version of yourself, even if it's those really horrible conversations that
yeah,
you don't want to have. You're a far better person after you have them, for sure.
yeah. I like that. And have you got any favorite quotes or sayings then you've picked up along the way that serve you well?
We have one in Done and Dusted, and it's regroup, reframe, refocus. I should copyright that. I should go and put that in.
I
We,
like that.
we,
Yeah,
we put that in a lot of our posts, but it's one of the things that I bring in with clients, to regroup. Let's
yeah,
get us around the table, okay? Because some of the times you're working with companies, and one person's doing one thing, one team's doing another, and it's bringing everybody around the one table. Reframe what you're talking about. So what's good, what's bad? It doesn't have to be bad. It's reframing that and seeing potential of what's working, having those honest conversations, and refocus. If product B is selling more than product A, or whatever that is, a service,
yeah.
don't be afraid to change that around and refocus your efforts on something else. And
Sure.
we encourage our clients to do that quarterly. So we're
Yeah,
not just doing that as a branding exercise, but it's being with your client and going, right, okay, we've got our quarterly regroup, reframe, refocus. How can we improve our service? What are we
yeah,
doing slightly different? On socials, do we need to do something? Like, should something else be maybe a bit of a focus this week? Or is there new product development that we need to be invested in? All of that. So as you go through the year, you are literally fine tuning as you go.
yeah,
And that way you are constantly adapting
yeah,
and making sure that you are relevant to what your customers need. And I said this before, your brand is not what you say it is. Your brand is what your customers say. It's the conversation about you when you're not in the room.
yeah.
So if you can make sure that you are excellent in everything that you deliver.
Brilliant. Yeah. So you just passed a big milestone. So what does the future look like for Done and Dusted, and what do you see as the main challenges moving forward?
I think for us, we've got two really big clients coming up, and I just cannot wait to work with them. One of them is in the automotive industry, and
Okay.
I just seen some of the photos come back from a photo shoot there from Milan, and yeah, I cannot wait to get started. So we've got some really big clients coming up. I'm actually doing a little bit more consulting as well
Okay.
with Intertrade Ireland and with Belfast Met. And yeah, I think in terms of where we need to be careful, I think it's about helping people get into business right now, but understanding budgets are going to be changing,
Yeah.
and it's about helping clients. I mean, back when I was growing up, it was very much you joined a design studio, and now we're seeing smaller splinter studios, and that they, including us, we group with other design companies, other video firms, whatever. We've just taken on a videographer, and it's fantastic. A tribute that we can now offer our own clients because we're just getting so much video work.
Sure.
But it's understanding that budgets are going to be different. Different people's priorities are going to be different as well. And how do we work with that? and also people's living situations are going to be different, affected by the economy, affected by all of that. And as you and I spoke about before, with the war in Ukraine, different people, their products and their services are affected by supply chains. And it's being aware of that and how that affects business on every level, even motivating staff. When it comes down to it, even just the motivation of the person who is answering your emails or your phone calls to your clients, are they motivated? Are they happy? Has the top person in the company actually engaged in that conversation? And that's going to be very, very important going forward.
Yeah. So, and you talked about consulting there, and if you were talking to somebody maybe going into business for themselves and budgets are going to change, is there anything else, any other key advice you would give that person?
Yeah, get a sugar daddy. Yeah,
That's it, yeah.
when I was starting out, budgets were, a lot more, like you could get sort of what we would call bread and butter clients, that you knew you were going to get steady income from, and then that allowed you to springboard and go for the bigger clients. And like anybody starting out, that's usually where you start from. You can, go and get investment. You can look at angel investors. You can look at taking loans and whatnot. I would say this time around, any advice I would say is you're going to have bigger pockets right now. You're going to have more investment. You're going to need to be investor ready much quicker. I would utilize Twitter a lot more if that's where you want to be, because in terms of like the SaaS and software development, there's a lot more engagement through that internationally. But if it's going to be something more like a product or a service driven, I mean, you definitely are going to look at your budgets, because that's going to be whenever I was in Allen Overy, that was 12 years ago, and I did work with the two head guys there, and that was 12 years ago, and he said, Dani, volatility is going to be the new norm.
Right, okay.
And that's 12 years ago, Scott, and we look at where we are now, and it's getting worse. We've got climate change and all of the rest, so that's going to affect then server operation as well. We need to be aware of this, and we need to build it in. And the idea of being a greener company, it's not twee anymore. It is something that we need to actively demonstrate.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And just finally, then, thinking back, if you were to start your company again, is there anything you would do differently?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, and some of the talks that I do, I say this right from the start: don't be afraid to delegate early. I didn't. I think there's a bit of a mindset when you start out that if you delegate, it means you don't know what you're doing. Congratulations, you don't know. That's why you delegate. So it's like that's part of the lessons that you learn. You're like, okay, these things that you don't enjoy and that you're not passionate about, it's okay to get the person who really loves that stuff, get them to do that. And I think the earlier that you can do that, the better, because it frees you up and you are still then your passionate self about whatever area that is. And also you've got the right people doing the bits that you don't like. If it's writing contracts, if it's, copy proofing, if it's accounts or, anything like that, that's when you want to just go, okay, you guys do that, because you can work through, the price of that. But the price to you is your health and your sanity and your stress levels,
And that, I mean, that's quite a common theme with these chats that I have, and I'm keen to know. I mean, there's a fair bit of confidence probably involved in starting to be able to delegate. How far was it along for you before you gained that level of confidence or learned that lesson?
I would say we were in business. I would say probably in year 4, year 5.
Yeah.
Because it was still my baby. It was still me wanting to, not out of any kind of ego thing, but I just wanted to make sure that we were just providing our clients just the highest level of service. But then I had to let go a little bit and go, it's okay to have this person do. I guess for me, it was finding the right people. And once I was able to find the right people, then I could relax and be like, oh, okay, I know this is done. I have full faith in these people. I have full faith in my team. If I'm not able to present, I know one of my other designers can step up and go, that's okay, I've got this, and that's fine. But I would say for me, for my personal experience, that took a little bit of time to get the right people, and you get burned along the way. You might sort of go, okay, I'll take a chance here. And, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But I think it's getting used to doing it. And
Yeah.
like they talk about, failing fast and then learn from it. It is, it's like delegate and it should work. But if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Just
Yeah.
get up and just keep going.
Listen, thanks so much for coming on, Dani. Some brilliant insights there and loads of passion. I really enjoyed that. Thanks so much.
No problem, Scott, anytime.